Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the latest installment of Texas RE's Reliability 101 and 201 webinar series. Today we have Mario Alberto de la Garza, our manager of O&P Compliance Monitoring, here to discuss Reliability 201 operations and planning programs. Before we get started, we've got just a few things to go over. First, as always, which you can see up on your screen right now, is our antitrust admonition. I will spare you listening to me read the entire thing and remind you that if you have to please contact our general counsel. As I did just mention, this is one in a series. If this is your first time here, welcome. Also, how did you only first find out about this one? As you can see on the calendar, we've had a whole bunch of these over the past couple of weeks. The recordings and presentation materials for all of those are posted on our training page. So if you did miss any, you can catch them there. Just a reminder, we are closed tomorrow, but then we're finishing the series out strong next week on the 24th, where we'll have our Reliability 201 CMAP feedback loop. And then on the 25th, we've got two sessions, one in the morning going through compliance in Align, and then one in the afternoon at the usual time for reliability services. And then that leads me to our next point. We've got other events coming up, including the two talks with Texas RE after those 201s that we have coming up. And then we've also got our cyber and physical security workshop coming up on August 28th. So be sure to join us for all of those. And if you somehow still have time in your busy schedule with all that outreach that we're doing, there is other outreach going on as well with our ERO partners. NERC themselves is hosting a GADS wind and solar template and application training. That is an ongoing series that ends in July, the end of the month, I should say. Then on June 27th, MRO has their regional summer assessment webinar. From July 16th through the 18th, WEC is holding their Power Systems Security Conference, and I believe that is in person only. So if you happen to be in that region or want to take the trip down there, it's an excellent opportunity. And then July, oh, nope, I was wrong. WEC is July 13th through the 15th, I believe. I made a mistake on this. And CERC's workshop is on July 16th through the 18th. Apologies about that, folks. But be sure to check all of those out. You can find links to them in our slide deck that is posted to the Texas RE website. As I mentioned to those of you who got here early, we will be using Slido today. The code for Slido at slido.com is TXRE. And if you enter the code TXRE, you'll see the first of the questions that we have up today. And this one's an easy one right across the plate. Nice and slow. How many years of NERC compliance experience do you have? And while y'all are getting those answers put in, I will turn it over to Mr. De La Garza.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for that. Like that said, my name is Mario Alberto de la Garza, manager over O&P Compliance Monitoring. And just to give you all a heads up, throughout this session, we're going to have a lot of questions. So be ready to have Slido ready for you all to go. So it's going to be a very interactive session today. So we're seeing a very widespread amount of years experience, 16, 15, to brand new. Welcome to the ERO, whoever that is who's starting in this new world. So we have a very spread out, broad range of experience, people with experiences in the call. That's great. A lot of first and 2 years. Wow. All right. It's all righty. Thank y'all for participating. Just like I said again, today's session is going to be very interactive, so be prepared. Next slide, Pat, please. So what we're going to talk about today is we're going to expand from what my colleague Phil Bracy talked about a couple of weeks back in his O&P 101 session. We're going to build from the base that he has set up for you all. And if you all didn't made it to that webinar, I highly encourage you all to look at our website. It's recorded, so you can listen through it, after this webinar. So we're going to go through the 3 pillars of building your foundation of your program, which is determining your obligations, which in short summary means what are you responsible for? What kind of standards, what stuff is you're responsible for per the RP? Determine the strategy to be compliant, and then the ongoing implementation. Next slide, please, Stat. So just do a real fast recap from my colleagues Phil's presentation. For obligation, there's a couple tools out there available for you to determine what you're responsible for in regards to standards and per the ERO. The first one I'm going to make a call out is the rules of procedure, the ROP for short. So that's the rule book that you as an entity and us as a region, we need to follow in a day-to-day basis. It dictates the monitoring methods, it dictates provisions of evidence of how long you need to retain your evidence for, and disposition of findings. The other shout out I want to give out in this slide is the effective date of status functional applicability spreadsheet. Is this monster spreadsheet that you as an entity, you can utilize to filter by your function and see what is applicable to you, which standards and requirements are applicable to you. It's a great document out there that's looking in NERC's website. Next slide, please. Now, for the ongoing compliance, like I said, is part of the strategy in determining how you can be compliant. Developing alarms, notifications, documenting procedures, and training, just to mention a few, are essential for the success of your OMP program. One way to look at it is the more you invest in this phase of building your foundation, you'll see greater return in the future. Next slide, please. While you review your strategy, a couple things to consider. One strategy that Phil considers, do you have the right people in house? In essence, you need to assign those SMEs and perform internal audits. You want to have a higher level compliance program. You want to set up yourself for success when we come around and knock your door. Is it easy? Absolutely not. We know that it's not convenient, and we know that internal auditors are shunned, just like we do when we come around. But we believe that doing those internal audits are essential tool for your success of your program. Look at the NERC IP. I forgot to mention that earlier in one of the slides. So NERC every year releases their implementation plan, where they identify risk elements and the associated standards and requirements for those risk elements. One of those hot topics in the NERC IP is inverter-based resources. We wish we could interact with those new GLs that are bringing IBRs into our footprint. We know it's difficult for them, mainly because it could be one man showing the whole compliance program. But there are some that use third-party contractors that support the compliance obligations. But even if you contract that out, the registration is the one that has the entity that is registered is the one that has the compliance responsibilities, and therefore we encourage folks to review the third-party support work. Then also look at the compliance oversight plan. My colleague, Rashida Caraway, manager of risk here in Tech30, she, at the moment that you register, she's going to start working with you and develop a compliance oversight plan. And usually the target is about 6 months. However, if you want to learn more about specifically about COPS, I highly encourage you to look at her presentation. Then also review risk assessments. This is assuming that you have an internal risk assessment. I suggest entities looking to growing their compliance program to look internally, identify your own risk. Maybe it is a PRC 5 area, maybe it is PRC 27, FAC 8. How are you addressing those risks, and how are you building the internal controls to mitigate those risks? There's also like some reports out there that TechSRE and NERC posts out there, so I highly encourage you to look at, it's just a link away from our website to find those reports. Also, assuming that you already identified your SMEs, there's more. You need to identify the tasks that those SMEs will be performing and what tasks are those third-party contracts may be doing. Like I said before, previously, you need to identify which SME you have available. You might need to have the need to go out there and hire third-party contractors. Also, determine if there's needs of what evidence needs to be retained. Is it more beneficial to use templates like the CIP-ERT or our new PRC4 Mod 26 R2 templates? Are evidence easy to access, or do you have to develop a repository for the evidences? Are the evidence up to date? Is the evidence past your internal audit? Then for the last topic I'm going to touch is going to be related to the last box. Find out who does what best. The NERC Standards Review Forum offers an opportunity for you to talk to your peers and see what they're doing. There are a lot of people going through process like you, or they have went through the same process as you. NSRF and NERC Standard Review Forum, NSRF for short, is a great place to meet other people. It has 2 sessions. So it has an open session, which TechStory participates in, and a closed session, which is just entities, not TechStory involved. If there's a key takeaway from this slide, is that there's a bunch of resources out there for you to help out in this journey. Next slide, please. Now, I warned y'all, this is going to be a very interactive presentation. So first question is, which O&P reliability standards are emphasized in your organization's internal training program? I see a couple of people. LTRE, FAC8. We're going to talk about FAC8 in a bit. So hopefully this will help out some of y'all that voted or wrote FAC8. While y'all do that, I'm going to take a sip of water. Mod 32. Okay. PRC5. Oh, a lot of PRC5. So we're going to talk about PRC5 shortly. So for PRC5, FAC8, we're going to touch on some tips or some suggestions from our perspective that might help your shop. And I keep 4 more participants. All right, I'm glad that this is in the afternoon. I see a lot of participation taking place. IRL 10, bar 1, COM1, FAC8. So it seems that based on the results here, PRC5 and FAC8 are the winners. And thankfully, in this presentation, we're going to cover both of these items. Next slide, please, Thad. Thank you all for participating. So, like I mentioned, this is the we're going to talk about 3 standards in this presentation: PRC5-6, protection systems, automatic reclosing and sudden pressure relay maintenance; EOP 11-2, emergency preparedness and operations; and FAC8-5, facility ratings. Next slide, please. What are some challenges that you're facing with PRC5? Let's see how many. I would love to hear this out from you all. We have engaged entities with PRC5 in the past, and I'm interested to see what internal challenges, or what your uncle is saying is their internal challenges. And by the way, this is not being held against you all. I don't see who's responding to this Slido, so please feel free. Quantity of devices, that's data tracking. All of those 2 things are interrelated, right? If you have thousands and thousands of devices, the tracking of those test reports or those activities become a challenge. I completely understand. Auditability of records. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about that, and hopefully there's going to be some tips that y'all can take back to your shop and help with this. Many departments involved. Yeah, there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, but that's just the nature of the standard. It's not just a silo standard. And we'll talk about that a bit. Contractor availability. We'll talk about a little bit about contractors too. There's more. Man. I'm glad this is in the afternoon. Long interval scheduling. Yeah, that is just the nature of the standard. There's some of the activities is every 5 years, every quarter. Some of them are just monthly or every 3 months and so on. So personal turnover. I think for the personal turnover, and I'm going to touch bases on it, it's very critical to have a good training program and to help people get up to speed and up and running. I think I don't see anyone participating anymore. So thank you all for participating. So hopefully a lot of the items I'm going to talk today might help your shop. So as you all can tell from the previous survey, PRC5 is a very challenging standard. There's multiple timelines to follow and a very complex implementation plan. There's still the implementation plan is still ongoing. There's still some devices that need to be transitioned, by the way, hint. Hence, it's critical to have robust procedures and processes in order to help staff keep up with the requirements for existing or newly commissioning projects. The intent of PRC5 is to ensure the proper operation of protection systems, automatic reclosing, and center pressure relay to operate the reliability of the bulk collector system. And if we don't do this, if y'all the foot on the ground don't do this, how are we ensuring that the grid is going to be running reliable? Are they going to operate properly on a miss operation? So this standard is very important in order for us to have a reliable grid. And I want to step back before jumping into the implementation any further, because I want to highlight the importance of knowing what you have on which and in which bucket falls into, which is one of the items that previously was mentioned in the survey. Is I have 1,000 devices. Like, that's the biggest challenge. We hear you. It is empirical for you and your shop to have well-maintained component lists. Once that established, there are many options that you can go with. You can determine building alarms around the due dates, timelines, or even blow it up and get one of those fancy off-the-shelves asset management systems out there. But we are aware that that's a challenge. Individuals that might have just a couple hundred devices, you're doing okay. But the ones having thousands and thousands, it's a different ballgame. But it's very important to know what you have and what gets added. And therefore, the data management piece kicks in. Having these procedures there help you mitigate with the large amount of devices you might have. It is important to have a good processes when commissioning new devices, because that sets the clock, the initial data of all subsequent activities. So if you don't have a good procedure of commissioning new devices, you might miss an interval for an activity that is supposed to take 3 months later, or 10 years later, who knows? But it's important to have those procedures very robust in order to capture, make sure to document the initial date, which is going to be your start of your clock. If you don't manage that and keep control of it, we come around and knock on your door, and when we ask if to show us, hey, Relay X, give us the activities for the most current and the previous previous activity, it'll be an opportunity for you. And as you move forward through time, the maintenance of protection system, that process, that documentation is really important for those elements. Documentation is one of the hardest things to manage in the PRC5, mainly because you're going to have different challenges, internal and external, if you contract it out. Next slide, please. Below the next couple boxes are some ideas for you to think about and take it back to your shop. And hopefully y'all consider take this back to your shop. Do they have the right personnel? Are they trained? And are they trained effectively? Going back to the previous the Slido question, which one of the answers was personnel turnover. It is essential to have proper training, robust training, for anyone coming in new, they get up to speed and they know what they're doing. PRC5, as you know, is besides all the issues mentioned in the previous slide in Slido, it has a bunch of other challenges. It's so many activities, so many devices, and it's essential for people to be trained or have robust documentation to know what they need to do. Add another box, plan internal audits. Make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to do per your processes, and see if you capture all the evidence required for specific activities. Did you do an internal assessment and then didn't show up? Why? Do you have effective internal controls, or not having effective internal controls could be the reason why it didn't show up in your risk assessment. Instead of having a non-uniform checklist, develop a common template that folks could use for this task. This goes back to new employees. Sure, it could result in many checklists, but when you put the work in it to make a standardized template, it will be easy for new people coming in and get used to the flow of how things are working. Especially, in my opinion, this is a very good tip, especially if you're managing a large fleet, if you have assets all over the United States, because ideally you would have all those plans working off the same type of template instead of each plan doing their own thing. Peer reviews. Review task performance, ensure that the tasks were completed and documented. You might have, Joe doing the first round, doing the checks or whatever, and then you can have someone else come around and verify that they did it the proper way or did it right. Next slide, please. Now, determining the sufficiency and completeness of the process of retained evidence. This is another challenge, like was mentioned earlier. You have 1,000 devices, 1,000 records. How do you compile? How do you store evidence? Are you using the PRC5 template posted on our website? Or is your own workbook up to date? Is the evidence, test reports, et cetera, reflect the actual work of the intended task? Do you need to request your third-party contractor to expand the test reports? Why I'm saying this is because in some cases you could have a third-party consultant just give you a little piece of paper with a checkbox on it saying, "Hey, I did this," but is that sufficient to show that they did activity A3 for device X? Is that sufficient or not? You know, it's you as a hiring them as a third-party contractor. You can request for additional information for those reports that you get from them, and I think it's essential for you to trust but verify the work. Periodic review the evidence to ensure that the data is accurate. It goes back to the internal audit. Make sure that you review evidence, make sure that it's updated and accurate if you're not missing a piece of evidence or might be missing an activity. For new rules, make staff aware where the evidence lives. Again, back to training. It's essential for the training to be robust to allow people to learn where things are living, where the evidence files are accessible to, and make those files easily to be accessed by anyone needed to. And then last bullet, which is something that was also mentioned the Slido, which I'm very glad of this one in particular. PRC5 is not a silo standard. It impacts so many other standards out there. It impacts PRC27. It impacts FACT8 for your facility ratings. It just spreads over, and there's so many hands to the cook. But having a whole process in place, make sure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to do, ensures that the success for your program for PRC5. Next slide, please. Now we're going to change gears to another standard. Let's talk about EOP 11 now. What are some challenges you're facing with EOP 11-2? And I know that this standard touches multiple registration. There's different requirements for specific registration. So I would love to hear from y'all GOs, TOs out there, GOPs. Not everyone at the same time, please. Again, just a reminder, all the responses you're putting in the Slido, they're anonymous. No, I'm not going to hold it against you. There you go. Thank you. Cold weather calculation time frame. Okay. That's a EOP 12 problem that in the future. Challenge, not problem, challenge. Critical loads. All right. I imagine your critical loads, you're referring to, hospitals, police stations, fire stations, etc. Contractor training. That's I'm going to do a little shout out at the end of this presentation to some other material out there that might be helpful with this. Contractor training. Oh my God, that blew up out of nowhere. Okay. Hopefully by the end of this presentation, I might have other resources out there. Yeah, come check it out. One more participate, documenting process. Yeah, it's a challenge. A lot of one thing that I highly encourage people not to do, tribal knowledge. I've been there. I don't recommend tribal knowledge. Document it. It helps with, if you have someone new coming in, at least it's documented somewhere. I was in the opposite end of me coming in as a new employee somewhere, and why you do this? Oh, it's just because that's how we do it. Well, that's not great to hear. All right, documented process. All righty, inspection record keeping. Next, let's keep moving. So EOP, we're going to start with R1, which is the R1 specifically for the TOP, which is states that every develop and maintain your operating plans, and they need to be reviewed by the reliability coordinator. So a couple of things that the first item will say is have a process in place to periodically review the operating plans. Even if it's like the periodicity, it depends on your shop. However, make sure that if there's any changes to the standard, for you to go back immediately to review your plan to see if there's any changes needed. And because if there's any changes needed, guess what? And before you can even implement that operating plan or plans, those need to be reviewed by your reliability coordinator. So that's a key component. I will talk about it more in the second bullet. But if you have any lessons learned from the, any cold weather event you had or any extreme weather event, go back and review your operating plan and see how you can capture those lessons learned into your operating plans. And ensure that the updated operating plans are reviewed by the reliability coordinator prior to implementing. That's the letter of the law. Any plan, operating plan or plans need to be reviewed by the reliability coordinator prior to implementing, for you to implementing. So building, it's essential here this place to have internal controls to make sure that if there's any updates to the plan or any post lessons learned, need to review the plan and get them approved by the reliability coordinator before you have the reliability coordinator. Before you implement them, have them reviewed by your reliability coordinator. Next slide, please. And then first box, once you made updates, when to determine you captured lessons learned, or there's a update to EOP 11 dash now, whatever new version is out in the future, make sure to train your staff on the new updates. Otherwise it's just gonna get, the plan's gonna get updated, that's it. You need to make sure that your staff is trained on it. Conduct lessons learned, discussions, events after post events, like I mentioned before. Improving your plan is not just a do it once, forget about it. It's a continuous process of you trying to improve upon your plan, making it better. Even if after tragic events or any kind of event, make your plan better. And have clear roles and responsibilities. This is one I personally favor ones just because if you don't have a clear roles and responsibilities in your plan, then someone is going to be running around in circles trying to figure out who's going to be doing what per the plan. Having those roles and responsibilities clear in your plan will save you time, and it will save you time and let people do their jobs, which is operate the electric grid. Next slide, please. Now we're going to jump to R7. This is specifically R7 is the development of your cold weather preparedness plans as a GO. So the first thing is periodic review your cold weather preparedness plan, and maybe it might be due because of lessons learned. Have processes in place to make sure that you periodically review your cold weather preparedness plan, and update any other documentation you might have related to that cold weather preparedness plan. Annual inspection and maintenance of generating units, freeze protection measures. And this goes also for the cold weather preparedness plan. The timing of those inspections and you review your cold weather preparedness plan, it's critical to pick something that's reasonable. For example, for the inspections, it makes more sense for you to do the annual inspection and maintenance prior to the cold weather season. Doing it afterwards, are you really helping? It makes more sense to do it before the cold weather. Same thing for the reviewing your periodic review of the cold weather preparedness plan. It makes more sense to do it before the cold weather. But any lessons learned, sure, they need to take place after the cold weather. Next slide, please. Like I mentioned before, that the intent of the standard is not to just develop something and let it stand. Ideally, you need to periodically review it and make it better, such that it helps your shop run more efficient and the grid more reliable. And also, last but not least, I'm going to jump into the last box, clear roles and responsibilities. Make sure that the staff knows what they're responsible for to avoid, people not left in limbo and trying to figure out what they're supposed to do. Next slide, please. Perform annual inspection prior to the cold season, like I mentioned before. Doing your cold weather inspections in March and in preparedness for the cold weather season starting in November, October, that doesn't make sense. It's better to start out before the cold weather season, make sure that there's anything that needs to be mitigated in the near term. Peer review and maintenance and inspections goes back to my PRC 5 recommendation, which is you might have someone do the peer do the maintenance and inspection, have someone else check on it. And no set of eyes always helps. Yeah, I can speak that from experience. Checklist. It's one of those tools that I cannot encourage people to use more often. Is use a checklist. That way, make sure that tasks are completed. But one caveat with this is that if you have a checklist for your cold weather preparedness plan, make sure that that checklist gets revised when you're reviewing you're doing your periodic cold weather preparedness plans review. It's key for them to be in sync. Review of third party work. You might have. I know a lot of entities out there hire third party work to install the windbreaks, to install the temporary heaters, the insulation. It is essential for you as the racer entity to go out there and inspect if they did the proper work. And if they didn't, bring them back to make it right. So in other words, trust but verify. Walkdowns. One thing that I forgot to mention, EOP 11-2R7, we've been engaging with a lot of entities on this standard for the last year or so. And there's two reasons why. Reason number one is part of the NERC IB has been identified as a risk by NERC. And the other reason is these recent events that have happened in our state for the last couple of years, where we have suffered a lot of people a loss of life due to cold weather events. So we're taking it very seriously at Texas RE. And part of that is us engaging with entities on this standard. And we're taking it to the next level too. We're performing EOP 11-2R7 walkdowns. Go and visit sites and make sure that, hey, what improvements have you done on your plan for cold weather preparedness? What is temporary installation you have put in place, etc. And I believe it's a very helpful tool for y'all to perform those same walkdowns. But by the way, hint, hint, we're doing those walkdowns ourselves with y'all if we go visit y'all. Last but not least, think forward. EOP 11-2R7 eventually is going to get retired, and we're going to have EOP 12 come in. There's new expectation for EOP 12 for GOs. Just be thinking about the future, what needs to happen in the future. Next slide, please. Let me take a sip of water. Now let's talk about EOP 11-2R8, the training component. So for this requirement, the GOP needs to determine who's going to be providing the training, and then provide the training to those operation and maintenance personnel responsible for implementing the cold weather preparedness plan. So a couple of things that I want to highlight here. To develop a process to periodic review maintenance and operations personnel to be trained. What you don't want to happen is not training the people that are implementing your cold weather preparedness plan. It's essential for you to know who is implementing it and then training those individuals. And it might be the case where 1 year you might think that, hey, this person is going to implement cold weather preparedness plan, but then later on, their department gets sent somewhere else, or they're responsible for something else. They're not part of your cold weather preparedness plan implementation. Then now the people that you're training changes. Keep those records. That includes for any individual changing job roles with your shop or people leaving the company. Keep those records in play. Keep those records internally. Onboarding training. For any new staff that you might be having come into your shop, make sure that they get trained before implementing the cold weather preparedness plan. We believe that is essential for that any new person that is going to start your shop and they're going to expect it to be implementing the plan for them to be trained on the plan before implementing the plan. And documentation, tracking, training easily available. So does your shop know where they can look for to see when is their next due date for the training? If the answer is no, think about that, make it something that is accessible for them to get a hold of and be able to look at their status of their training. Next slide, please. Now for a little bit of strategy, train annually. And I'm not gonna spoil for y'all, but train annually makes more sense. The current standard doesn't say you need to do annual training. It says you need to train in the cold weather preparedness plan for personnel, operations and maintenance personnel implement the cold weather preparedness plan. Training annually reinforces the training. It reinforces the content of the cold weather preparedness plan. It ensures that people are doing what they're supposed to do. Make the training percentage requirement R7. That's straight from the standard language. Make sure that you capture unit specific training for this training for the requirement R7. Follow a framework to design and develop the training. Developing training following a framework helps in providing a clear and a structured training, which may help with the learning experience for your staff. And this is the spoiler alert I was talking about. Think forward. Specifically, the first, I'm not sure where the box is in reference to my screen, but the train annually, that becomes a requirement for EOP 12-2R5 in EOP 12. It becomes a requirement to be annual training. So start thinking forward. Just a piece of advice: if you know that there's going to be annual training requirement in the future, might as well get in the group of things. Next slide, please. So now let's talk about FACT-8. This is another standard that we've been engaged in with a lot of entities in the past couple of years. So I'd love to hear from y'all. What are some challenges that you're facing with FACT-8? And as a friendly reminder, this is anonymous. I'm not going to hold it against you. Lack of central database. I'm going to tell you a little bit of story, and hopefully, back in one of my roles in my past lives, that was literally the one reason why I was hired. I was hired as a new engineer at the shop, and my boss at the time looks at me and tells me, "You know why you got hired?" And I was like, "I don't know." And he just grabs a physical copy of FACT-8 and throws it to my face, like, "Read this and you'll figure out why." And I read it and I was like, "Okay, facility ratings, what do you want me to do?" Literally, my first project was to develop that central database. And I'm not sure if they're still using it, but I put a lot of passion and heart to that database, and I helped develop the whole process for it. Internal controls, lack of central database, change management. That's very key. And there's some tools to help you with the change management, which I'll be touching on in a bit. Documentation and tracking, document control, correct ratings, walkdowns. I'll talk about walkdowns. That's a very hot topic of the press for me. So I'll be talking a little bit about that. Alrighty. Next. Oh, one more participant. Updates after projects. It goes all into change management. You have a robust change management program, and you have the tools to ensure that whatever changes were made were capturing all your systems that need your facility ratings. Next slide, please. So let's talk about implementation of FACT-8. Clearly identify the specific underlying assumptions, design criteria, and methods used to determine the equipment ratings. So for FACT-8 R2, R3, it specifically states that, hey, you as a GO or TO need to have these underlying assumptions. Otherwise, if you don't have those, how can you ensure that you're correctly calculating your equipment ratings for all your devices in your system? How do you ensure that? And how can you be consistent across multiple facilities if those underlying assumptions, design criteria, and methods are not defined? Develop process to review facility rating methodology and the facility rating workbook and the corresponding documentation. You may ask what I'm referring to facility rating workbook. I'm talking about the documentation that you have showing the calculations and the equipment ratings to calculate the facility rating for your facilities. Some cases folks use spreadsheets, other individuals out there, race tranches, use databases. In my past life, we built our own database from scratch using using some software suite out there I cannot mention. The intent here is to ensure that you have the processes to validate the data, ideally in a periodic basis. Have a process to document and capture the evidence related to new facilities. Have related evidence easily available. Kind of with the last item, ensure that it store all the evidence in one single place. Don't back in my previous life, that was my job. Part of my job too was go out there, figure out where we have this evidence somewhere stored. And thankfully, I work with great colleagues that they help me out find all this piece of evidence. It would have been really nice if everything was centrally located somewhere in a network drive or physically somewhere in a drawer. So it's essential to have all this stored somewhere. That way, new person or assistant employee, they can find it easily. Have clear delineation of responsibilities. The last thing you want is something fall through the cracks and people start pointing fingers, right? You want to have clear roles and responsibilities of who's going to do what and who's responsible for what tasks. Next slide, please. So let's talk about some of the other strategies for you to consider. Facility walkdowns. FYI, like I said, we've done a lot of FATGate engagement in the past couple of years. And we are starting to do FATGate walkdowns. We already started doing that this year, and we're going to continue doing it. So keep that in mind. And in my opinion, it's a great tool because let's say that you had a breaker that you had to replace, then that's the perfect time for you to do a walkdown to ensure that even the existing equipment that you didn't replace is accurate, per the nameplate information on the field. Sure, it's very daunting to do facility walkdowns. You cannot do them all one time. I'm not saying that you should go and hire hundreds of employees to walk down all your facilities, but you have to be strategic about it. Think about how you can look at your oldest infrastructure first, highest voltage, highest risk first, and then start going through all your facilities. It takes time, we're aware, but we're not saying you go hire 100 people. Be strategic about it, how you perform your own lockdowns. Like I mentioned before, periodic review of the facility workbook. The review of the workbook ensures that the data has been calculated correctly, and the results ensure that the data fed to all your downstream systems are accurate. By downstream systems, I mean your planning group, your operations group, your reliability coordinator, other TOs, other GOs. Have a clear document process how any facility ratings get communicated to your planning, operations departments, or the reliability entity and other entities. This is where the previous item of clear delineation of responsibilities come to play. Also, because knowing who's going to be responsible for communicating new ratings to in our footprint to ERCOT or to your neighboring entities, it might save you your time. It might make things run more smoothly. Have a revision history of your facility rating methodology and your facility rating workbook. This way, by having this revision history, ensures that your shop is using the latest and greatest FRM, facility rating methodology and workbook, ensuring that people are using the right facility ratings. And another thing I want to add is the importance and why we wanted to bring FATGate back to the fold into this presentation is because it's been in NERC IP for a while, and also we've seen a risk in our region for FATGate. And mind you, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this. There's other resources out there available to you for FATGate, and hopefully a lot of the themes that I touched in this presentation, they go back into some of the resources that we're going to talk about in a bit. Next slide, please. Now, last question, I believe. Which recent Texas Review article on the 2024 risk elements do you find to be more interesting? So, by the way, if you all didn't know, I encourage you to look at the Texas Review, mainly because my department, OMP Compliance Monitoring, we post articles monthly. Every month we have a new article out there. We started the year with Mod 26, then we did EOP 11, then we did we've touched a lot of other standards this year so far. I think the next iteration of Texas Review is going to have CIP 14 on it. Highly encourage y'all to go check it out. There's other stuff in there that's really interesting, good information for y'all. Facility ratings. I believe we did that one last year, I think. And if not, we're going to have one this year too. Only one person so far. There you go. Thank you for that. So the most recent edition of Texas Review is available here, and he's providing a link. Highly encourage you all to look at the CIP 14 Texas Review article. One of my colleagues in the VLAB wrote it. Great article, great tips for y'all. So the key takeaway here is go read the text review. There's good stuff in there. Next slide, please. Now, we're wrapping it up, bringing y'all back to the we're not gonna talk about standard specific, but there's standard specific resources in this slide. So some resources available to y'all. I'm gonna give a shout out to NERC Standards Review Forum, NSRF. Join the meetings. You're gonna meet a lot of people that have gone through the same might have gone through the same headaches as you're going right now, or you might hear the new challenges coming up for you. Join our workshops, talk with TexasRE, Reliability 101, 201s, and the text review. Like I said, the text review, we have an article every month for OMP that's specific for OMP. Now let's go down to going back to touching the previous standards I spoke about, PRC5. I added the supplementary reference and FAQ from 2015. Yes, the standard is, PRC 5-6 is beyond the 2020s, but there's this great FAQ document that I know a lot of smart people worked on it, and I highly encourage you all to check it out. It might help your shop. Yeah, I really believe that it might help your shop. Another resource I'm providing y'all in this slide, our PRC5 spreadsheet that we developed in TexasRE. I highly encourage y'all to look into it, take some ideas from it if you don't want to use it, but hopefully it's useful for y'all. Now for EOP 11-2 and EOP 12, I have a bunch of resources you can tell. The first two, the two bullet items, they're from the small group advisory session for cold weather preparedness back in 2023. The first link is the presentation, not the presentation, the FAQ, frequently asked questions, where industry asked questions to the small group advisory session, which was led by NERC and other regions, and provided answers. I believe our very own Kenneth Carver helped them with that effort. And then we have, for the second link, we have the cold weather preparedness small group advisory session, actual presentation for 2023 for this general session. Third bullet is the recording of that presentation. So I highly encourage you to look at the recording at least. Then the last bullet, Kenneth, myself, and my colleague, Blair Giffen, we participated in this small group advisory session for 2024. Highly encourage you to check out the slides. By the way, FYI, there's going to be a new FAQ document pertaining EOP 12 coming out sometime in the future. I don't have the date on top of my head, but keep an eye out for that. And for FAC8, NERC, the ERO release in 2022, the ERO Enterprise Themes and Best Practices for Sustained and Accurate Facility Ratings. A lot of stuff that I spoke about today comes from that presentation, from that report. It's very informative. I highly encourage you all to read it. It has a lot of good information and a lot of stuff that you can take back and think about it. Next slide, please. Here's my contact information. Don't hesitate reaching out to me. I'm always available. So give me a call. If you have any questions or your uncle has a question, please give me a call. Any questions? I believe there's one. All righty, I'm going to read the question aloud. EOP 11 overlaps with POC2 rules on cold weather. Without having two EOPs, how entities implementing these different rules? I cannot say what other entities are doing. I cannot speak on that. However, in my opinion, it doesn't make sense having two different EOPs. If I'm right, it seems like a lot of administrative work. I'm trying to figure out a way to leverage that. I would encourage you to try to figure out ways to leverage that. Any more questions? Is TexasRE developing technical guidance at a more granular level for developing FAC8 ratings list and determining most limiting elements? No, we're not considering doing that. However, if you have ideas, throw them out to me. Shoot me an email with more detail what you're looking for. Maybe we can help out. And like I said before, FAC8 is really close to my heart just because I helped build one up from the ground up. So a FAC8 program. So yeah, shoot an email if your uncle has some questions, some suggestions. Let me know and we can consider it. Nothing is off the table. Going once, going twice. No more questions?
Oh, well, Mario, we'll give them another moment or so to get questions in. Folks, don't be shy. This is, after all, our last one of the week. But Mario, while folks are possibly getting questions in, do you have any closing comments for our listening audience?
I see one more question, which is a really good question. Can you briefly explain the relationship between PRC5 and FAT8? Well, let's say that per PRC5, you're supposed to replace a current transformer, right? Or you do a test per PRC5 and you determine, well, it barely passed, we need to replace it. And well, what does that mean? By replacing it, sure, you get someone out there to replace the current transformer, we're done with it, but that's not it. There's a ripple effect. Replacing the PRC5 replacing that current transformer might impact your PRC27 process. What does your PRC27 process for R1 process dictates what you're supposed to do when you make changes to your protection systems settings or your protection system equipment? Then it impacts your FAT8 because that new CT you might install might be rated higher than it was originally rated for. That's going to impact your facility ratings. So that's one simple example at the top of my head. And I'm sorry if I'm looking over here, make sure that there's no other questions.
I think you might be in the clear, Mario. Anything else to share with our audience before we let them go for the afternoon and have a wonderful week?
Yes, always going to reiterate, go check out the Texas Review. We're making posts, we're submitting newsletter article every month from O&P perspective. I'm hopeful that some of that information is helpful for y'all, but also do not hesitate reaching out to me or reaching out O&P Compliance if you have any questions. So those are my closing remarks. Thank you everybody for joining today.
Thank you so much, Mario. Folks, if you're not currently signed up for the Texas Review, you can send an email to information@texasre.org and we'll get you added to the list. We hope that you have a wonderful week, and remember to join us again next Monday at 1:30 p.m. for our next Reliability 201 session. Y'all take care.
Thank y'all.